teenagers shared how much university life and friendships in Nottingham had meant to Grace and Barnaby.
I know Barnaby will be super touched by everyone that's here, and he loved it. He loved it here. He couldn't wait to come back. Drove me mad, but his heart will be with you guys forever. Look after each other. It's the big thing, is that look after your friends and look after people around you.
The parents of Grace and Barnaby bravely speaking at the vigil this afternoon. Well, there's going to be another vigil to mourn all three victims. It's going to be held tomorrow afternoon in the centre of Nottingham, with a minute's silence to be held at 6 o'clock in the evening. We'll bring that to you here on GB News. Meanwhile, in another development in the Nottingham attack story, detectives are investigating CCTV footage of a man who appears to match the description of the Nottingham attack suspect attempting to enter the window of a residential care home. A 31-year-old man with a history of violence is still being questioned by police. GB News spoke to Jason Derbyshire, a resident from the care home, who saw what happened.
Just some guy stood under this archway, all dressed in black, got a black rucksack, black beanie hat on, just staring at the edges over there. Gone back in my room, had a wash. 30 seconds later, there's really banging, loud banging, trying to get through that window. I didn't see the security guard come out, but apparently he did. The guy asked him, is it a hospital or a hostel? He went, no, it's a hostel. And then he just came back through this archway and just walked off there, dead calm.
Well, in news away from Nottingham, one of 3 Britons who died after a boat caught fire in Egypt has been named as Christina Quinn. The 58-year-old had been taking part in a scuba diving lesson when the vessel burst into flames on Sunday. Miss Quinn was a chief executive of St Luke's Hospice in Plymouth, which confirmed her death. It's understood the fire was caused by an electrical problem in the boat's engine room. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight to fillet Thursday's newspapers, we have the Bert and Ernie of the comedy world, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. Can you do the laugh?
Which one's the good one?
I mean, I guess it's a matter of taste, isn't it? But you can be whichever one you like. Anyway,
I'm the heterosexual one.
Yeah.
I think I'm the... Is Ernie the yellow misanthropic one? I think I'm probably that one.
Yeah, that'll do you,
okay.
Definitely. So let's have a quick look at the front pages. We have the Daily Mail, who are leading with a story we just saw in the news there. 2 fathers lost in grief. The Guardian have scientists creating synthetic human embryos in stem cell breakthrough. Rather alarming and encouraging news at the same time. The Metro, united in love. iNews, Tories losing support from homeowners as Hunt backs new rate hike. The Times, look after each other and love everyone. Those fathers once again there. The Daily Star, we've turned into cyborgs. And there is a picture of Elon Musk, who is the cyborg chief. Those were your front pages. So our first paper is the Daily Mail. They're going with the main news of the day, I think, Josh?
Yeah, 2 fathers lost in grief. This is the footage of them, the 2 fathers of the 2 of the victims from Nottingham's attack. And there's a vigil in Nottingham. And, yeah, I mean, anybody, any parent, but any human being, but certainly as a parent with children approaching that age, it's you know, you can't imagine what they're going through. And I believe the man on the left of the father of Grace, he's a doctor, and he himself is a hero who saved 3 people who themselves were stabbed. And
nothing else very much we can say about that at this present time, if I understand it correctly. But The Guardian have led with something perhaps with longer-term consequences for the nation, for humanity at large. Nick?
Yeah, they've gone with scientists create synthetic human embryos in stem cell breakthrough. And so this is the sort of new world. This is the Matrix world where you just be able to grow people, stick them in those little pods. I mean, I'm paraphrasing the article. That's not actually in there. But so they're sort of embryos, but they're not treated legally as such because they're outside the jurisdiction of the UK. So it's a grey area about ethically, well, in so many ways. But
will it create? I mean, presumably it will have some therapy options. Is it going to map onto the same sort of territory as the stem cell therapies, which are currently? Well, I know this. Funny enough, I was talking to somebody today at lunchtime who happened to know the amount of vitriol and hatred that Michael J. Fox has been subject to, apparently in America, because he has made stem cell treatment available to himself outside of America for his Parkinson's disease.
Oh, I see.
It's a very successful treatment, but it is the Christian right largely who and I don't know where you stand on that, but it's obviously it's kind of partly horrific dystopia, but also it's extraordinarily effective.
What I want to know is, did you eat at Pret? Is that where you went for lunch?
No.
Okay,
No.
fine.
it's just funny, I only had laughing because we get these stories like 5 minutes ago. It's all blurry, and Simon's like, "Does this relate to stem cells?" The one thing it does do, it says the motivation for the work is that scientists can understand the black box period of development, which is it goes up to legal limit of 14 days. One thing I did research and find is that they tried to implant these into mice, and they didn't develop into life. And also the same with monkeys; they died after a few days. So we don't have to worry just yet about cloned sort of fake humans. But very soon.
I saw a thing about the other day, we were talking about COVID research when they were originally doing the research, which is suspected to have been leaked now from the laboratories, and they were injecting a coronavirus pathogen into albino mice with human lungs.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Human lungs.
I was there for the experiment. I oversaw it.
I mean, we've already... Well, it's Tesla's quote, monsters beyond your comprehension. Yeah. But I don't know, stem cell research is a potential... If you can eliminate the need for, obviously, the horror comes from using aborted fetuses for it and so on.
Exactly, yeah. So I guess we'll have to see how this is going to be. Like any scientific development, there are going to be pros and cons, and it's how this stuff is controlled and how it's what the oversight is.
Cons. For this time tomorrow.
Look, if it cures baldness, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Now, there is another story here. Desperate Johnson hits out at Tory MP. So this is one of the people who's been on the committee that have I believe they've signed off now on their report, essentially damning him, which is why he is why he's quit. And it turns out that MP, Bernard Jenkins, there were allegations that he attended a birthday party during that time in lockdown and whatnot. So he's calling hypocrisy, which I think is fair enough. Although arguably Bernard Jenkins wasn't the leader of the country. And the other reason, of course, is that it's not actually just the Partygate that's the issue. It's him misleading Parliament. That's really what the case comes down to. And that's a separate thing altogether. But Johnson is desperate, as it says here, and he's hitting out, and he just doesn't care who comes down with him.
Yeah. I'm not going to give that story the oxygen of publicity. What do you think?
Well, no, exactly. I mean, yeah, it is ludicrous that the guy running the inquiry has done the same. They were all doing it. They were all.
It does seem extraordinary. There's some of these peerages. There's somebody's been elevated at the age of 29. And the supposition is entirely because they were, they know where the empty bottles of Prosecco are buried. And it does feel like an extraordinary... I have some sympathy, to be honest, because I just think the whole thing was ridiculous to begin with. But, this is what happens when things spiral out of control from a tiny little seed planted the wrong way up.
And this was the man who made it. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say I was on the original list that got Tipexed out. But it wasn't worth the wait.
You're suddenly now caught between a rock and a hard place.
Arguably, it was ridiculous, but this was the man who made it ridiculous for us all.
Well, let's have a look at the Times now.
Yes, so the other story that they have, apart from what the events in Nottingham, is nip vaping by children in the bud, says the head of NHS. 40 children have gone to hospital last year due to related incidents.
What exactly is it, though? I mean, it's nothing like cancer or something, is it?
No, I don't. I think that there's, with lung damage and worsening asthma. So it's essentially the point is it's better than smoking, but that doesn't make it good.
So these are respiratory diseases you can get from vaping.
And I imagine imagine if you have preconditions, that these pre-existing conditions, these would exasperate it. But also because the thing of nature of vaping is they all come in different flavours, and you've got the different colours. There's this argument that it appeals to children.
Oh, it definitely does. I tried vaping a few months ago. I used to smoke. I gave it up about 30 years ago, and I smoked for only for a few years. Never really got on with it. But there's a lot of evidence that nicotine can be quite a powerful cognitive enhancer. So I thought I'd try it. But you just feel like an absolute fool. I mean, all the flavours are like bubble gum and you know, watermelon. I mean, it's
not manly,
ridiculously like childlike.
But, I was going to say, I mean, as you said, like the under 20s, hospital visits because of vaping have quadrupled. But it also looks really annoying, doesn't it, when people do it? You just like stop. It's lame. They're thinking about moving it from 18 to 21, but apparently that won't happen. They'll just ban a few of the flavours.
You can get pipes which look like old-fashioned pipes, such as a conservative philosopher might use, but which actually are vaping devices. You can fill them on the inside. I think if they made those the only legal means of accessing the nicotine, that would stop children hanging around on street corners.
Also, they solve
Michael
crime.
Oakeshott flavour. Yeah. That was obscure.
Which one?
I said Michael Oakeshott flavour. You know,
yes, exactly.
With the pipe.
No,
He's
I love
a conservative
Oakeshott.
philosopher. It was a bit obscure. I knew Simon would like it.
I do. He was one of my heroes. Scruton used to smoke fags, of course, though, didn't he? And even took the tainted buck, I think, from them, didn't he, to promote them at one point?
Not sure what that means,
Anyway.
but yeah.
What, the tainted buck?
Is that
He
brand?
was paid by, I think, British American Tobacco or somebody like that, paid him to be a sort of brand ambassador for smoking. Yeah. It's often used by bad actors to try and undermine his legacy. Finally, what world-changing event is the Daily Star going with, Nick?
Well, it's a big one. They've gone with "We've turned into cyborgs," which is from Elon Musk, from a tweet he did about 3 days ago that they've managed to make into a headline, which is quite impressive. And I've got the actual tweet here. He said, "We are already cyborgs. Our memory is overwhelmingly outsourced to computers. They remember everything with extreme precision, down to the pixel. Our thinking is much less outsourced, as there are still many things we can do that AI cannot, for now." So there's that scary for now. And it's not a new idea, really, for Musk or in general, that we've already become cyborgs. Some people say because of our reliance on phones, we're essentially already cyborgs. So...
It's a very good question, exactly. I mean, people, when they think of cyborg, they think the thing has to be actually implanted inside you. It seems to be a sort of biological connection, but the interface is so instinctive now, it may as well be. I do think there is something to that.
It's an extension of our being, in a way. And also now with the virtual reality and Apple releasing their new product, which will arguably be a success in the long term.
The glasses.
The glasses thing, and that will integrate within our vision.
They're very expensive, but I would, if that aside, I would take them on if they deliver what they appear to, because train journeys, I would just be able to eliminate everyone around me or have their faces artificially improved.
And you've got is that an iWatch you got?
Yeah,
that's part of it. That's reading your. That's pretty close.
My friend told me the other day he's thinking about just getting rid of his furniture, just getting the goggles, just sitting in one chair. I'm like, you're not supposed to plug yourself into the Matrix. You know what I mean? You're supposed to be forced in it later by the agent.
You could have like a Regency drawing room and Marie Antoinette and all the rest of them all just
as many pipes as you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's another little interesting story here. Ice cream man ban, and this is happening in 33 roads in London, and essentially because they leave their engines on, they're saying that it's bad for the environment. The diesel engines of the this is like, we're in the one hot week of the year.
Yeah,
we need our ice cream vans.
Are they only allowed to use diesel to keep the fridge?
Well, I believe those are what the majority of the. Someone's come up with some new invention, but it's obviously a lot more expensive way of running it. But it just seems really unfair. Like, come on, we're talking a couple of weeks a year for these people to make.
Nanny state gone mad.
When I was in Australia, nearly 30 years ago now. 30 years ago, I used to make money. We used to buy beer, cold beers, by the slab, it was known, 24 cans and a slab of beer, and then take them to various queues outside concerts and cinemas and things where people were just standing in the hot sun, and you'd just sort of sell them to them, push them along in a wheelbarrow or whatever. I think that maybe a little bit of that kind of spirit might be more popular than the diesel engine.
I'll take a beer.
Students.
But what was your markup?
Oh, we doubled the price.
2 shillings.
One. And then if you found a gig which had a good queue outside it, you'd have to keep turning it over quickly, to kind of try and get the whole.
You lived a rich and varied lifestyle. And
you made enough money to get your ticket back.
Exactly. Anyway, those are the front pages sorted and a little bit of employment advice. Come back in a second for meaty stuff like patriotic tax, a DeSantis positive poll or spin, and government lawyers making COVID excuses. See you in a couple of minutes.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans, the comedy bad boys Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. So we kick off with the Daily Mail. Josh, Matt Hancock faced with hugely unpalatable options. Back in the jungle, by the sound of it.
Yeah, go easy on us. Government lawyers beg COVID inquiry. Probe asked not to use a retroscope to judge mistakes and accept the height of the pandemic was akin to war. So I had a doctor use a retroscope on me and it was strangely pleasurable. And yeah, this is obviously what's been going on. It's been going on 2 days now, and they're looking into the preparation of everything that happened. And the government is sort of getting their excuses in a little bit early. And the Department of Health's lawyer, Fiona Scolding, Ms. Scolding, which is a wonderful title, of course, right? She's just saying that they would not necessarily have made the same decisions today with the benefit of hindsight. So that almost, maybe that's the closest we'll ever get to an apology to some of the decisions that were made, like closing schools and making my children thicker.
I have some sympathy. Yes, it was very difficult. Obviously, they were doing it in real time, and it was. But there were plenty of people offering alternative readings at the time, and they were not merely kind of argued over. They were dismissed.
Yeah, look, the lawyer says it was an all-consuming period akin to a war.
Yeah.
So can the Nazis use this excuse, saying, guys, don't give us a hard time. You don't understand, it was war, things happened.
We invaded Poland. We never expected France and England to kick off over that.
It's a terrible analogy for that reason. It's like, yeah, you're admitting to war crimes, essentially, which is what I think basically a lot of the lockdown stuff was.
More importantly to me, it's not simply that they were making difficult decisions on the hoof and they can be understood, but they were absolutely adamant throughout that their decisions were correct and that they were smearing people. including myself to some extent, who spoke out on social media and so on, saying that these lockdowns were going to be counterproductive, were going to do a lot of damage, that certain kind of voices and certain preferences were not being properly aired.
A narrative was pushed. And actually, it was interesting that very first few weeks, it was more fluid and there was debate at that point. And then it just all went out the window and suddenly, like, this is it, and you do this otherwise you are killing people.
I remember Boris Johnson on Holly Willoughby and he who must be not named, Philip Schofield's couch, road testing herd immunity. I was on tour, I was in Scunthorpe at the time, watching them that morning and just thinking...
Watching your audience figures drift away.
Just thinking, this is it, isn't it? It's not going.
It's tours down the toilet. But you know what they did here, and this is the thing that used to drive me batty during the whole COVID thing, was it says more than 200,000 people have died after testing positive for the virus. And it's like every day you'd look at the papers and they'd be like the figures of people who died with, never from. Give me some froms, please.
Very hard to say because, I mean, obviously if somebody's hit in a motorcycle accident or something comes in and they've got COVID and then they die, I mean, then you can say, well, that's obviously nonsense. But a lot of them were very grey areas because if you have some sort of metabolic disorder already or whatever, or, of course, if you're just old. I mean, my father-in-law, just to give a slightly random example, he clearly, definitely died of a stroke. This was many years before COVID, but they put on his death certificate he had long-term prostate cancer, which he'd had for 10 years and had not killed him. You know, there's no question, but they have that. And
I thought you were going to say they put COVID, even years before.
But my point is, these things, you know, this is not a new thing with COVID. The death certificate, unless there is a very obvious trauma that has induced death or whatever, it can very often be like a slightly moot decision.
But there was a more sinister potential behind it with COVID.
God, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, what I'm amazed about is that the lockdown files haven't really caused more outrage. I think it might just be because they're in the Telegraph and everyone's annoyed that they've got the scoop and they just think, oh, it's the right-wing media or something. But why has that not caused massive outrage? I don't think it has caused the requisite outrage. And I tend to agree as well with Lord Frost that the lockdowns actually just revealed our already existing relationship with the state, that we were already over-dependent.
Very good point. Commons banter now in The Guardian, Nick. Honours are not even, it seems, between Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, Keir Starmer dares Rishi Sunak to call immediate general election, classic kind of PMQ stuff. And he's saying the Tory economic crash means that millions of mortgage holders will pay £1,000 more next year, blah, blah, blah. But he's worrying about internal wars in the party, which is a very, very tenuous link to make. I mean, obviously, the mortgage stuff is to do with interest rates, which is to do with inflation, which you could argue is partly to do with lockdowns, which Labour wanted, but also to do with a number of other factors, of course.
Yeah, but Tories implemented.
Implemented, yes.
To do with the coup against
Liz
Truss.
I've never voted for the Tories, so that doesn't bother me at all. They were both awful. So the thing is, it's a bit of silly kind of, you know, PMQ stuff. And then it's a back and forth about peerages, and they say, well, you suggested Tom Watson, who spread vicious conspiracy theories, which then Lindsay Hoyle told off Sunak for, even though he kind of did. Yeah. And it's just, and look, and it's not as if Starmer really can talk about infighting in parties, is it? I mean, come on.
Well, he's taking advantage. This is just political theatre, isn't it? He's taking advantage of a moment when Sunak is easily embarrassed and Starmer is relatively calm on his side of the court. But, you know,
But there is truth that the government is distracted with its own internal party affairs, and they're not arguably getting on with the job of running the country, which comes on the back of nearly this lost decade of Brexit. And, you know, even like some Tory MPs have been saying maybe we should go to an election sooner rather than later, before the real economic factors of, you know, inflation in terms of people's mortgage. Did you not see that? No, they're basically saying once people start losing their homes, even more Tory MPs are going to lose.
Oh, they may do. I mean, so I think it'd be very foolish, because I think they have it in their capacity to ease the financial pain, the economic pain a little bit in a budget before the next general election.
It'd be a terrible time to call it. That's why Starmer's saying call it now, obviously.
I do agree with you, though. I don't think it's going to be very easy, and I think they have mishandled the economy, and I think a lot of it was, as I say, due to Liz Truss having basically the right ideas, but
the blobonomics booting her out.
Well, anyway, we'll go down a very deep rabbit hole there. Telegraph, Josh. Wes Streeting has happened upon a novel approach to getting the super wealthy to pay more tax. Appeal to their sense of honour.
Well, this is very clever, actually. It's a real win-win. Rich should do patriotic duty and pay more tax, says Wes Streeting. So this is in the context, it should be said, of he was being asked about nom-doms.
Yeah.
And basically, it's kind of a brilliant idea to push it, like this whole idea of the patriotic idea, because it's win-win. Either it appeals and it works and people do pay more tax, which is what they want. Any government is going to want that. But also, even if it doesn't, it's saying we're a patriotic party and people should come and join us, and it goes against, counter to the narrative of Corbyn and the sort of far left cranks and whatnot, and they're proud of being British. And the other clever part of the strategy is it's a little bit of a dig with old Sunak, because his wife, of course, is a non-dom and not paying taxes.
Or
so
I think has stopped that now, but she was,
I believe
quite
she
recently,
might be still. Anyway.
I'm pretty sure she is paying her. I don't think that would be feasible.
Right. The problem with it is, of course, the left always talk about what people should do, and it's completely absurd because people aren't going to do this.
They won't do it, no.
You have to incentivise people's self-interest. No one pays more tax, especially in a country that already has ridiculously high taxes and is failing in the basic duties like defending the border and, you might say, providing adequate housing. So who is going to say, tell you what, I'll pay more tax to this crumbling country? Of course they won't. And just a quick reminder that Labour will still be worse.
It's an interesting way of framing it, though, isn't it? And I don't blame him for doing it, but the idea that if you want to see better services, if you want to see infrastructure and so on, well, we all know that there are a huge number of different things that taxes go on, but there are some that are vastly more popular than others, and you can always present it and say we should all pay our fair share of the costs towards, keeping the potholes filled in or whatever. Meanwhile, we all know that there are great chunks of the welfare state and so on that are highly disputable, that they need to sort out and cut these costs rather than just raising more taxes for them.
Yeah, but, but they're saying, critics saying, oh, everyone's going to move out, all the rich people and go. And that's not... Everyone said that last time with Blair, and they didn't. They stayed because Britain's a great country.
People said that about Brexit.
Although something I'll say that is happening is people on sort of modest, medium incomes are thinking about moving. I've heard this from a lot of people, so...
I just don't know where I'd go.
No.
Over to the Times now, Nick. Our single most misleading headline of the night: Trump behind DeSantis in US election poll.
Yeah, they've gone with Donald Trump behind Ron DeSantis in US election poll, and then you look down and find, it's only in Florida, where, of course, DeSantis is popular. That's his state. And it's even then, it's only on second choice votes. So he's
absurd. Neck and neck on first choice.
Yeah, exactly. So it's absolutely absurd because Trump is absolutely destroying him. He has 43% of the vote with DeSantis on 22%. Yeah. So, fake news, folks, as they say. In this
Are you not surprised? I'm quite surprised about how that's emerged over the last few months, that Trump is so far ahead of DeSantis.
No, I'm not surprised. You listen to my podcast with Toby. I backed Trump the whole way because Trump is on a whole other level of charisma and fame, name recognition. DeSantis, he had the flop Twitter launch. He doesn't have the charisma. He's a very solid governor, but he's just not anywhere near on the same level. And this attack on Trump lately, whatever you want to call it, the indictment, has only galvanised his base, so I'm not surprised at all.
That's true, but and you might be right that they're not, or, we're not talking about political strategists. We're just talking about voters who vote with their instincts, of course. But it does seem pretty likely that Trump would probably bring out more Republican votes, but he would certainly bring out more Democrat votes. Does that not seem like that?
There is an argument for that, but there is, I think he's got 67% of Republicans who support him, but you've got to think that other third really don't like him at all, so, and are sort of alienated by him. So it's a tricky one. Florida, yes, of course it is misleading, but Florida is a very important state. It's determined
swing state.
Determined
Bush.
Yes, absolutely. So, and I think it shows proof of concept in that Ron DeSantis can win. And there's an argument that the Democrats want Trump to run because, like you said, it will galvanise their base.
They seem to be spending an awful lot of energy, not just putting the indictment thing aside. They seem to be still, and all the, MSNBC and so on, the aligned media, really seem to be trying to delegitimise him. Yeah. Which, again, you would think if they felt... I would have thought they want him to run.
Yeah, but everyone's going like 4D chess and why they just hate Trump. Yeah. They just want him in jail and they'll do anything to stop him. And, of course, and if he wins, he could potentially pardon himself, so they have to stop him winning at all costs.
That is true.
He did get revenge.
Guardian now, Josh, and what a tangled web we weave when first we practice kissing in disguise.
Indeed. Woman accused of posing as a male found guilty of sexual assault by kissing. So I'd never heard of that specific type of thing. It's sort of the basis of Boys Don't Cry. I remember that wonderful Hilary Swank movie. And also it happened about a year ago or something. But in this case, it's Georgia Bilham, who then said she was called George, very original disguise. And she was sort of seeing someone over a few years and who was very short-sighted, like legally blind without her glasses.
Right.
And would wear, she would wear a hoodie, so she'd put on male clothing, have this hoodie, have a deep voice with a Birmingham accent, and then always took off her victims' glasses with men. And really, that sounds like my Saturday night with the missus. So, but that she was also cleared of 16 other sexual offences. So they basically, it seemed to be, when they got together, they're saying that could have been...
At some point, she probably
At some point, she would go, you're a bird.
But she's basically... It's quite interesting, mildly interesting by today's nonsense, but she says at the time she was confused about her sexuality, she thought she might be a lesbian, so she pretended to be a boy instead. But now she's straight anyway, is that right?
Well, yeah, a few things. Well, they said, have you ever thought that you wanted to change your gender and become a boy? She said no. If she said yes, you get so much support.
Yeah,
so messed up there. But also, it's taking beer goggles to a whole new level this one time. The person couldn't see. But what's really weird to me is this Billum person had pretended to be a boy called George Parry who had anxiety and claimed to be paranoid because he was mixed up with Albanian drug dealers. Why is your cover story also awful? You know what I mean? Like, that's the fake story.
I think we found a perfect partner for Leo.
It is the classic tangled web, I believe. Anyway, we are at the halfway point, but after the next intermission, we have some messages for 2-year-olds on diets, we have Interpol comics, and we have a teacher reported for teaching facts. Familiar. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions, and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio, and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back to Headliners. Daily Mail to kick off this section. Nick, and the education sector continues to impress with its ability to make a crisis out of a kerfuffle.
Yeah, this is shocking and infuriating. So, history teacher, 54, was treated like a paedophile and faced classroom ban after giving science lesson about puberty that upset children with gender dysphoria. So this is Roy Huggins. He's 54, been a teacher all his life, never had any problems, asked to cover for a class, and of course it's about puberty, and he's like, oh, I don't really want to do this, I'm a history teacher.
Yeah.
Then people complain, even though the class seemed to go fine. A couple of people who had gender dysphoria, complained, and then he was reported to the local authority safeguarding body, and they didn't just discuss it with him, the school reported him, and then it was rejected by that, and the head teacher then upped the ante and sent him to the disclosure and barring service, which has the power to ban teachers from working with children. And so now he'll have to disclose that if he ever goes for other jobs. This head teacher should be the one that's charged.
He has been given the all clear now, but it was horrific.
He's got the all clear, but he has to declare that in future, and it's destroyed his reputation. But he's only coming forward to say, this is how bad it is in teaching, this is how captured they are by ideology.
And he says that he was considering suicide. I mean, it's great. This guy, he's written books on teaching. Like, he's, to all accounts, an exemplary teacher over there. He was just doing a bit of part-time work there.
And was given no warning that this class might contain some particularly sensitive... I looked him up online as well, the head teacher. I won't name him or anything, but he looked like a perfectly conventional head teacher. I couldn't find any kind of framing or context for it, except that there had been a case of an actual, like I think a sexual assault or something had gone on at that school several years earlier. I don't know whether they have some. That was sort of just, searching it.
The argument is more that they're beholden to this ideology that's pushed in, by Stonewall. And I'm going to say it: diverse academies trust. If you got your kid at one of those diverse academies trust schools, you've got to wonder what ideology are they putting onto their kids, and also how are they treating their staff.
The very fact they put the word diverse into the title as if it's the sort of, as if it's the headline.
I find this story, as you say, maddening, disgusting, and at a point where our teachers are already, fighting. I mean, this is crazy.
And indeed, the extent to which he stepped in. A history teacher has gone, I can't teach biology. They're fine, just read the textbook.
He read the textbook, that's the thing. He was literally reading from the textbook.
He did say that you should smell nice to attract the ladies.
Well, what's wrong with that?
I don't know. That's a good one, that one.
Apparently he's giving the lads a few pull-up tips. Anyway, Telegraph now, Josh. Diet coaches, it gets crazier. Diet coaches for 2-year-olds. I would have thought tricycles for 2-year-olds would make more sense, to be honest.
Indeed, diet coaches for 2-year-olds in new war on obesity. Really what they mean is diet coaches for the parents.
Yeah, obviously.
And this is because we're just seeing more and more obese people in this country, the larger bills for the NHS, but a big chunk of that, sorry, bad word, is children. And when it's children having these issues, this affects them for the rest of their life, has a massive impact, and it's very hard for them to not be obese as an adult.
Yeah.
So it's really about catching the problem early. Arguably, things like Sure Start were good in these things, in terms of providing parents with advice. Of course, Sure Start doesn't exist anymore. But now the NHS are trying to sort of nip it in the bud, so to speak. And it is parents, and some parents need some help.
I mean, I'm speculating, but I can't help wondering whether lockdown wasn't a bit of an influence on this as well. If kids aren't allowed to go out and play, I mean, we talk about it's a widely understood thing in terms of diet and exercise. You can never outrun a bad diet. Diet is 80% of it. But psychologically, if you're getting plenty of exercise, you don't feel so inclined to snack every time you feel a bit tired and a bit low. That's my view.
Yeah. Well, firstly, it's a good thing Lewis isn't here, or this would take up the whole show.
Yeah.
But secondly, the only positive about this, I mean, I'm not totally convinced the NHS will have the resources to manage to fix this or be able to do it, but hopefully they do. But hopefully it's also the end of body positivity, because what happened to that? I mean, this weird contradiction. We have some people like, support the NHS, blah, blah, but then some of the same people will say, be body positive, which is an absurd celebration.
Cosmopolitan magazine will have a 40-stone model on the front cover, that sort of thing.
And have to celebrate it. Nonsense.
Yeah. You have to recognise, is it a medically compromising condition or isn't it? Well, it is. It clearly is. Yeah, absolutely right. Times now, Nick, and a comedian who is in very deep water. She hasn't even appeared on headliners. What's she done wrong?
Yeah, I know. Malaysia asks Interpol to track down comedian over a joke, and it's about the Malaysian airline, of course. And I've watched the joke. This is Jocelyn Chia, and she's a Singaporean-American. And I've watched the joke. It wasn't that funny, but it certainly shouldn't be investigated. She said something about how their airplanes can't fly, and the best bit was she said some jokes don't land, which was not bad. It was
hacky.
Yeah, it was a bit hacky. It was reasonably funny.
The drift of the routine is that Singapore has become a first world country and
Malaysia's not been developing.
Still lagging behind,
But obviously it's absurd to have this hysteria about it, and we see this all the time now with jokes. So the Singapore foreign minister said, I'm appalled by her horrendous statements. We always have to defend their statements. We saw this with Jimmy Carr. UK politicians, Labour politicians, were going like, statements. They're not statements, they're jokes.
Yeah.
So it's completely disingenuous and absurd. And one thing I'd just add is that we get more and more of this when we have a global world connected by social media, because jokes, right, my theory on this is the more local, the better. So the funniest times you have are with your school friends, because you have so many shared references. Then as you expand to the country, it's a bit harder. But as you expand internationally, it's almost impossible not to offend someone. So obviously, well, Singapore and Malaysia are offended by this, but she's doing it in America, where it wouldn't have been a problem.
She's done her best to make some kind of, to create that kind of in-group. You're absolutely right. The in-joke is the funniest joke. She's tried to recreate that as a vibe, and it has fallen flat.
I'm surprised people got the reference to the Malaysian flight that disappeared. I mean, some people don't know it, but I imagine a lot. But this person, Intan Mazura Otham, said, inferiority and insecurity can sometimes turn people into this ugly, self-loathing persona and manifest itself as an awkward and heartless comment. That's the best description of a comedian I've ever read.
That is absolutely on the nose.
Absolutely nailed it.
And the other part you've sort of almost hinted at there is she's still doing a joke from 2014. It's material that she's got that works, so she doesn't want to give it up.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, if I remember rightly, there was never any suggestion that Malaysian incompetence was behind that. It was a question of who shot it down, wasn't it?
Was it Russia?
It was either Russia or Ukraine, wasn't it, at the time? It was all at the time of the... it went down over what was the previous iteration of the current war.
Yeah.
Well,
so it's not... I mean, it doesn't even work from that point of view. Anyway, we're going to workshop that in the break. Metro now, Josh, they are anxious that young people are getting their news from influencers instead of proper journalists, like what Metro have got.
Indeed, like us, like proper.
Yeah.
TikTok, a growing source for news, but from influencers, not from journalists. So 44% of 18-year-old, 24-year-olds get their use TikTok, and of them, 20% of the 44%. So basically 10% of young people get their news from China. Is the gist of it, because it's owned by China.
But from influencers, or are you saying
that's
from
just
the
from news,
platform?
but they're actually more... Influencers have a bigger impact on them. So it's more about opinion and...
But TikTok, I understand the fears that TikTok is a Chinese platform, but they're not saying they get their news from Chinese influencers. They might be
pushing algorithms that have influencers that will be selling a certain narrative.
That's a conspiracy theory.
Well, I'm willing to believe that.
Well, it's great news for our show. Yeah, it's great if they get it
very well.
Yeah. We're influencers now, guys, and they can listen to us instead. But also, the part that they selectively avoid stories that are too depressing. That makes sense to me, and I wish I could do that, because I'm forced to read this rubbish every day, and you do get miserable.
Well, it's yes.
I noticed that. You come in on the second day a little bit lower, don't you?
Well, it says here that it's the war in Ukraine and the cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
So let's cut the next section.
I don't know how much young people do need to know about things like that. Obviously, I'm not saying they should know bad things or soak up bad propaganda, but to be honest, I didn't really understand how the world worked when I was 16. There's this kind of expectation that kids are just got to, because they've got mobile phones with access to good news sources. There's no real need to or expectation. I started reading a proper newspaper, I think I was about 22, 23 when I began to actually leaf my way through a broadsheet.
I started last year when I started working here.
Yeah, same.
Anyway, talking of influencers, Nick, over to The Guardian now, the main influence in your life and that of many other eager young men.
Yep, the top G. So Andrew Tate served legal papers after allegations of rape and sexual assault, and this is 4 women in the UK who are pursuing civil proceedings against him. And they say things like that he choked them in 2014, one of them says. And again, it's the same thing with Tate. It's whether you believe it or not. I personally don't. I've watched the 4.5-hour podcast he just released with Patrick Bet-David, and I just find him very convincing, and I just find it unlikely that he did these things. As he says in the interview, he wouldn't have been speaking like this for so many years if he had all these skeletons in his closet.
Yeah.
And I do think it's interesting that I was watching him for years when he had just a couple of thousand views and things. No one came out then, but if you were a public figure who was targeted, now these people come out. And that's my question. It's not so much if you like Tate or not, but do you want to live in a world where the state can decide they've got it in for you and then go after you? And that's what I believe has happened. It happened with Lauren Southern. She wasn't allowed into the country. It happens with influencers who are on the wrong side of politics.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, politically on the other side of the spectrum entirely, but Julian Assange was subjected to what I thought were fairly creaky allegations, because clearly America wanted to extradite him and bring him to justice for what they saw as a breach of security, which was a perfectly reasonable suspicion.
I read a first-hand account of happened in terms of with the woman.
Okay.
And it
first-hand account by who then?
By her.
Yeah, right.
But an interview. Okay. But
I'm not saying that even by her own case. Yeah, I'm just saying that these things emerge. It's always slightly suspicious how they come out when they decide somebody needs to be brought down.
I mean, there is no evidence this is like any deep state and stuff. As the lawyer says here, despite Tate's outrageous claims these women aren't real, on reading the papers, he should now recall how real they are, and talk of the Matrix and false flags are going to hold no weight in court. So let's get it into court and see whether these people are real and find any evidence.
We will see. Coming up in the final section, we discuss why men are now shaving and where, hot phobia and liquefied pets. You won't want to miss any of that. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners for the final section. Armpit nose now, Josh, in The Guardian. Barely 90 years since Clark Gable revealed he didn't wear an undershirt. John Stones has revealed he shaves his pits.
Indeed, I didn't know who John Stones was. He's a footballer. Armpit Confidential, why men are now shaving and women are doing whatever they like. So this is supposedly, sports people do it for hygiene and for making them run faster, I guess, less friction, maybe.
Oh, right, like cyclists.
And then there's someone said that it stops people from grabbing, like, your underarm hair. Like, I haven't seen that in a football match happen.
That sounds very much a Man City thing.
Yeah. But grooming has been a part of human culture going back in the day.
Look at you.
Look at me, exactly.
Yeah.
I groom, I shave all of this off every
and
day.
glue it on here.
Yeah, just stick it in, that's it. But, you know, Egyptians would tweeze themselves and whatever. This is it's a cultural part of humanity, really.
Yeah.
But obviously fashions change, but seem to be more men doing it.
Yeah, John Stones. I mean, it doesn't say if he shaves his stones, but he shaves his armpits. And now maybe a little trim is reasonable. I'm not sure about the full shave, Sam, because this is the problem. Men are becoming women. This is why we need Andrew Tate.
But are women becoming men as well?
That's the problem. Because of feminism, they are.
So they are women not... Because I remember a few years ago there was a feminism thing of women not shaving their... That does seem to have gone away.
It's never really taken off, has it?
I think it's come back, and they're saying that it says about 98% of US women shave their legs and their arm, and it does seem to be... It's sort of some companies now using it in their advertising of women with hair on their armpits.
Maybe now that they're not allowed to have overweight women on the front cover of magazines because the NHS has recognised, maybe they can switch to hairy women instead as a way of being more inclusive.
It's already a thing. Shocking.
Wow. Not my thing.
Slippery slope. The school gate intersexual competition news now, Nick, and in the Daily Mail.
I'm a 40-year-old mum and I'm shunned for wearing sexy outfits on the school run. Other mums are just jealous. And not me, of course, Sam, but the article. And this is Sabine Roll-Cohen. She's 40, from North London, but she's a victim...
Might be Jewish.
She is Jewish. It's Roll-Cohen.
And she's a hot Jewish woman, Josh, because I've seen the pics in the article.
Is this my
She says she's a victim of hot phobia, and she is hot. And they are being jealous. And frankly, as a feminist, Simon, I approve of going to school in these outfits, or wherever you want in these outfits. And also, she looks like Andrea Corr in her prime.
She did look pretty good. I opened that story thinking this is going to be a hideously delusional middle-aged mum who thinks that other mums are going... You really need to dress differently because, you know... But actually, she does look great.
She's like a model.
But the interesting thing for here is this concept of hot phobia. I think that's... Like, the idea is if you're good-looking, people are going to treat you badly. And there's also the other argument that women, in particular, might be threatened or...
Oh, she's a homebreaker. She's an absolutely classic homebreaker.
Yeah, well, I've suffered hot phobia all my life.
She's like a 60s movie.
It's a huge problem. Too much hot phobia.
It's real, guys.
I remember going to collect the kids, you know, from school gates, and there were, you know, obviously in your head you have a little ranking system, don't you, for the, you know...
Well, I am still part of the school run, so I will not comment on
You mean for the mothers?
But one thing I definitely noticed was the kids do as well. When Edward was about 4 or 5, there was one mum he was obsessed with, not his own, obviously, and he would go, she is well fit, is it? This
is what your son would say. This does not sound like your son.
She is well fit, is it? This was his, and I would just pick him up on the grammar and try and correct that, but I couldn't correct him on the basic assessment.
OK, well, there we go.
He would say the name of the woman, but I won't embarrass her. I very much doubt she's watching it. She is well fit, is it?
No, you might get a little text, get a DM after the show.
Pet news now, Josh, in the Times. An eco-friendly way to dispose of your dead pets remains especially appealing, I imagine, if you murdered them.
Well, yeah, a new way to say a final farewell to your pet, liquefy them. This is supposedly because it's environmentally friendly because you don't cremate them.
No,
so instead it's a more expensive. It takes up to 20 hours. They put like water and alkaline chemicals, and you're left with the white bones.
Yeah.
And then supposedly this sort of liquid that is actually good for the environment.
Coffin liquor, they call it when it happens more slowly.
Yeah. So some people are now taking this up, and it's becoming much more popular. This is obviously in America, and you know, going towards our net zero thing, you know.
I think it sounds fine. I remember one that came in years ago. The Scandinavians had brought it in, and I haven't heard anything from it for a long time, but it was basically you could be freeze-dried and then shattered, and you would be granulated afterwards, like coffee.
So it sounds like something you do to someone at the end of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
You know, when you used to freeze them and then smash them apart.
Sounds like what your wife's going to do when you get home.
Almost instantaneously. So you were put into a sort of tank, and then they would suddenly lower the temperature, really, really suddenly. And you would just harden.
Yeah,
and then ultrasound, and that was it.
Yeah.
We're done.
All right.
I've seen that episode. I've seen that film.
Anyway, is that a Star Wars thing?
Yeah, Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. Han Solo, the Carbonite.
I'm pretty sure I read it in the news.
Maybe
I've got confused. Necrophilia.
I love you. I know.
Necrophilia news now, Nick, in the Times. Not to be confused with necrophilia, of course.
No, that's my website.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Still very still, though, aren't you?
Necrophilia criminalised in Netherlands to make convictions easier. So, obviously, Holland has a problem with necrophilia because it's too liberal. I mean, I'm surprised it hasn't been added to the LGBTQ plus thing yet. But, so, basically...
LGBTN.
Yeah, exactly. Where's the N? There was a 76-year-old woman No, not the person I would have chosen, whose corpse was sexually
So
abused.
you would have chosen... Wait.
A young corpse, that's what I'm looking for, Josh. The hot mum corpse from the previous story. She's alive, obviously, but if she was a corpse. So, let's clarify.
Yeah.
Why go for the old corpse? Anyway, so there was...
choice.
That corpse was sexually abused by a man, but it wasn't actually a crime because it was Holland, and there's only if you could prove damage to the body would it be a crime. So now they're having to bring this in to stop Dutch people
because he was a loving, tender necrophiliac rather than a brutal
problem,
sort of... Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, this is not good.
But we've had it in our statute books for some time. We don't need to worry here, have we? I think this is a Dutch thing.
It sounds like a Dutch thing, doesn't it?
Yeah. Probably something to do with William or Orange.
Well, I'm changing my holiday.
Finally, Josh, you've got just under a minute to take us back to the Telegraph for an ill omen on a Polish bus route.
Well, this is religious fundamentalism gone mad. Poland cancels 666 bus route to hell, this is the town in Poland, amid complaints of spreading Satanism. And they've changed it and they've said, oh, it's now the 669, guys. And people are saying that this is because of Catholic fundamentalism.
But had they deliberately made it definitely they're heading to hell?
It's the road to hell.
Yeah, but hell doesn't mean that in Poland, so I don't think it was
but lots of tourists would go there anyway and get a kick out of it.
I approve of this. Poland is totally based.
Yeah.
Kick out the 666 bus. It's Satanism.
Yeah.
Provided the Ofcom balance, though, didn't I?
Yeah.
I hope that they have kind of themed the bus up a little bit, because if you're going, we're going on the 666 bus tomorrow, kids. And
it runs on sulphur.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. Big horns. Anyway, the show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Thursday's front pages. The Daily Mail has the very sad story, the two fathers lost in grief. We have The Guardian. Scientists create synthetic human embryos in stem cell breakthrough. The Metro, united in love. iNews, Tories losing support from homeowners as Hunt backs new rate hike. The Times, look after each other and love everyone. The Daily Star, we've turned into cyborgs. That's Elon Musk. Those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. We are back tomorrow at 11 p.m. when Nick will be back in the chair with Francis Foster and Leo Kurz in the guest seats. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, good night.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it. Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Well, it was the Trump trial last night. Tonight, I'm going to be asking, is this a witch hunt, or is he really in serious trouble? We go to Nottingham, where a vigil has taken place after those horrendous murders yesterday. We don't yet know whether the police really will class this as terrorism or mental illness. We'll find out more. And a Conservative Member of Parliament is going absolutely crackers at the Home Secretary, asking why, oh why, did 50% of Albanians that crossed the Channel last year, why were they given asylum status? All of that in just a moment, but first, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. Good evening. A vigil has been held for the victims of yesterday's attacks in Nottingham. Thousands of students and staff attended the ceremony this afternoon, held in the grounds of the University of Nottingham, following the deaths of 19-year-old Grace O'Malley-Kumar and Barnaby Webber. School caretaker Ian Coates was the third person police named as being fatally stabbed yesterday. His van had been stolen and then used to target others. Well, at the vigil, parents of both teenagers shared how much university life and friendships in Nottingham had meant to both Grace and Barney.
I know Barney will be super touched by everyone that's here, and he loved it. He loved it here. He couldn't wait to come back. Drove me mad. But his heart will be with you guys forever. Look after each other. It's the big thing, is that look after your friends and look after people around you.
And then, in another extraordinary development today, detectives are now investigating CCTV footage of a man who appears to match the description of the Nottingham attack suspect attempting to break into the window of a residential care home. The incident wasn't reported to police at the time, and no residents were hurt. A 31-year-old man with a history of violence is still being questioned by police. GB News spoke to Jason Derbyshire, a resident from that care home. He was an eyewitness to what happened.
For the curtains, and there was just some guy stood under this archway, all dressed in black, got a black rucksack, black beanie hat on, just staring at the edges over there. Gone back in my room, had a wash. 30 seconds later, there's really loud banging, trying to get through that window. I didn't see the security guard come out, but apparently he did. The guy asked him, is it a hospital or a hostel? He went, no, it's a hostel. And then he just came back through this archway and just walked off there, dead calm. So yeah, it's horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. How someone can do that, I don't know. I really don't know.
Meanwhile, a Home Office minister has today said the government will provide more legal routes for refugees to enter the UK. Lord Murray of Blidworth says new routes could be implemented as soon as the end of next year. That's after more than 9,000 people crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year. News on the economy now, and stronger trade at bars, pubs and shops has helped the economy return to growth in the UK. The latest figures show it did expand by 0.2% in April, and that's recovering from a 0.3% fall the previous month. The Office for National Statistics saying the positive impact of improved hospitality and retail spending was offset by industrial action hitting other sectors. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News. Back now to Farage.
Good evening. What happened last night in a courtroom in Miami is, when you think about it, truly extraordinary. The 45th President of the United States was held in custody and faced this document. This is the indictment that was put before him yesterday. There are 37 charges, 31 of them under the Espionage Act. And what I want to try and drill into today is, has Trump made mistakes? Has he made some serious, careless errors? Or are these things that former presidents just tend to do? But the real question is this simply a witch hunt? Is this an attempt to stop the front runner to become the Republican nominee? And remember, he's now 40 points ahead of Ron DeSantis in the opinion polls amongst Republican voters. Is this simply a witch hunt? And I'd love to get your thoughts on whether this is or is not a witch hunt. Please let me know your views. Farage@gbnews.com. Well, first I want to get some political reaction. I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to speak to the former famous mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, and of course a man whose career was as a lawyer. Rudy, good evening. Thank you for coming back on the show. I want to ask you something.
Always great to be with you, Nigel.
Thank you. From what I understand, when they went to Joe Biden's house, they found a whole load of classified documents